are leading a group of fellow woodland critters in developing a new city, constructing buildings, meeting characters, and hosting events in an effort to make your new township the best before the winter moon rises. Welcome to the world of Everdell. Construct the Evertree by sliding the trunk into the legs, then shimmy the lower and upper branches down from the top. You'll need to slide the upper branches down at an angle to get them around the bulge of the leaves so they'll lay flat. Place the board on the table and place the Evertree on the stump at the top. Pile the twigs, resin, pebbles, and berries along the riverbank in their appropriate spaces. Pile up the point tokens and occupied tokens somewhere near the board. Shuffle the forest cards and deal some out to the clearings on the edges of the board. 3 for a 2-player game and 4 for 3 or 4 players. Put the rest of them back in the box. Place the 4 basic event tiles along the river, then shuffle the special event cards and place 4 of them on the lower branches of the Evertree like so. Put the rest back in the box. Shuffle the main deck and deal out 8 cards to the meadow. Put the rest of the deck face down inside the Evertree. Give each player a set of 2 matching workers. Each player places their remaining 4 workers on the upper branches of the Evertree, 1 on spring, 1 on summer, and 2 on autumn. The most humble player goes first. They'll draw 5 cards from the deck. Second player draws 6, third draws 7, and fourth draws 8. On your turn, you'll perform 1 action. There are a lot of possibilities for those actions, but they boil down to 3 basic options. Place a worker, play a card, or prepare for next season. To place a worker, you'll take one of the workers from your supply and put them on a paw print space to claim the associated reward. Spaces with a full circle around the outside are exclusive, meaning a worker can only visit that space if no other workers are there. Spaces with a half circle are shared, meaning there's no limit to the number of workers that can visit at a time. Basic locations are pretty self-explanatory. When you visit one of these spaces, you gain the reward indicated on the signpost. Forest locations are varied and generally more powerful than the basic locations. The second space on these locations is only available in a 4-player game. You can't place 2 of your own workers on the same forest location, though. Some cards have paw print spaces on them. These are destination cards, and you can place workers on them once they're in your city to gain the reward described on the card. If the card has an open sign on it, other players can place workers there as well, but the owner of the destination will gain 1 point token from the supply when they do. You can also place a worker on any remaining basic event or special event to achieve it. To do so, you have to meet all the listed requirements. So, for the Grand Tour, you'll need 3 destination cards in your city. For the City Monument, you'll need 3 governance cards. The Harvest Festival requires 3 production cards, and the Cartographer's Expedition requires 3 traveler cards. Special events will explicitly state what their requirements are, which may include paying some resources back to the supply. You can't place your worker on the event unless you meet the requirements to achieve it. Once you do, move the event tile or card beside your city for endgame scoring. And don't worry, you'll keep the event, even if you have to discard some of the stuff you use to fulfill its requirements later on. Each event can only be achieved by 1 player. The Haven is a shared space. When you send a worker there, you can discard any number of cards from your hand, gaining 1 resource of your choice for every 2 cards you discard. The discard pile is always face down, in this weird little nook at the bottom of the board. In Autumn, which is the final season of the game, you can send a worker on a journey. To do so, you'll have to discard a number of cards equal to the points listed on the journey location you're sending a worker to. And while the 3, 4, and 5-point journeys are exclusive, there's no limit to the number of workers you can send on journeys. Instead of placing a worker, you can use your turn to play a card. To do this, you'll have to pay the listed requirements back to the general supply. Cards can either be played from your hand or from the meadow. When a meadow card is played, immediately replace it with a new card from the draw pile. If something allows a player to draw cards from the meadow, though, finish drawing cards before refilling. But unless you're specifically told to draw from the meadow, you always draw new cards from the deck. If the deck ever runs out of cards, reshuffle the discard pile. There's also a strict hand size limit of 8 cards, and if you're ever given the chance to draw a card when you're at that limit, you don't actually get to draw any more. If you're ever required to give cards to another player, you have to give them to an opponent who has room in their hand. If they don't have enough room for all the cards you're supposed to give them, hand over as many as they can carry, then discard the rest. Played cards go face up into your city, somewhere on the table in front of you. There are 2 types of cards in the deck, critters and constructions. If the card is labeled as unique, you can only have 1 copy of that card in your city. Common cards don't have that restriction, but your city can only hold a maximum of 15 cards. The rulebook recommends a layout of 3 rows of 5 cards each, but since that can eat up a lot of table space, you may need to get creative. If you're playing a critter card and the construction listed in the top left is already in your city, you get to play that critter without paying its cost. Each construction can only be used like this once though. To help track that, place an occupied token on the free critter icon in the lower right corner of the construction card when you use it like this. Don't ever remove the occupied token, even if you later lose the critter you used it for. There are 5 different types of effects you'll gain from cards. Tan Travelers will only activate once, and that's the moment you play them to your city. They don't do anything after that besides count towards event requirements. Green Production cards also activate as soon as you play them, but they'll activate again during season preparation in spring and autumn. We'll get to that shortly. We've already talked about the red destination cards a little. They give you new worker placement destinations. Blue Governance cards will give you various bonuses or discounts when playing certain types of cards later on, and purple Prosperity cards are worth extra bonus points at the end of the game. If you've already placed all your workers, and you've played all the cards you can or want to play for the time being, you'll use your next turn to prepare for the next season. Reclaim all your deployed workers and gain the bonuses for next season as shown at the top of the Evertree. The game begins in late winter, so the first time you do this, you're moving into spring. You'll gain the worker in front of the spring icon on the Evertree and activate all the green production cards in your city. When you prepare for summer, you don't activate your production cards again, but you do gain a worker, and you draw 2 cards from the meadow, as long as you've got room for them in your hand. In autumn, you gain 2 more workers, as well as activating your production cards. Once you've claimed the bonuses for next season, your turn is done. And once you've already gone through preparation for autumn, and you don't have any more workers to place or cards to play, you simply pass all remaining turns. It's important to note that seasons are not rounds like you might expect in other games. It's possible for one player to prepare for spring 2 turns or more before anyone else does, and their turns aren't skipped while the other players finish up the winter season. Every player keeps taking turns until they reach the end of autumn. Only when you have nothing left to do are you passed over in the turn order. Once all players have reached the end of autumn and passed, tally up your points to determine the winner. Add up the base value of each of your cards, your point tokens, purple prosperity card bonuses, journey points, and events. If there's a tie, whoever achieved the most events wins. And if there's still a tie, the most leftover resources is the final tiebreaker. You'll find a set of solo rules, as well as an index of all the critter and construction cards if you have any questions about any of them, in the last few pages of the rulebook. And that's all you need to know to play your first game of Everdell. Hey, thanks for checking out BNB Tabletop, the home of the Board and Barrel, a live show every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Pacific where me and my buddies play board games. If you haven't seen it, you're missing out. We like to keep things interactive with our Buff and Nerf house rules that allow you to influence the course of the game, and virtual bingo cards that could win you a free board game of your own. So do us a favor, do yourself a favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell. Thanks again for stopping by. We'll see you Sunday night.